Golf club head displacement model. In this video, I'm going to go over the creation of a transfer function to model the displacement of a golf club head with respect to the neutral position. I'm also going to compare the derived transfer function response with some measured values that were measured using a slow motion camera. In the end of the video, I will also plug in some different inputs and talk about what they mean. A little bit of background information. A golf club is made up of several different components. These components include the grip, the shaft, the hosel, and the driver head. The main things that are going to affect us today are going to be the shaft, the hosel, and the head. The shaft is the long portion of the club that connects to the head in the hosel. The hosel is just kind of that neck portion of the golf club that the shaft connects into. The grip of the club will not affect us today, as the grip is where your hands would hold, and the vise that will clamp onto the club later will take away any flex that would occur in the grip, just as your hands would when you swing it. Now, when the head strikes the ball compresses, the head compresses, and the shaft flexes. The flexing of the shaft can be in three different forms. The first is that the shaft will actually lengthen as it swings. This can be very minute in size. The face of the club will rotate out, and the shaft itself will literally flex as you would normally think. The main way that we are going to look at things today is going to be just the normal flexing of the golf shaft. We're only going to be looking at the flexing of the shaft in the horizontal direction. Why? The flexing of the golf shaft affects the launch of the golf ball. This flexing can make it go higher or lower depending on how much it flexes. The shaft flex will also determine whether or not it is suited for a certain player. If the shaft flex is too much, the player will lose control and a little bit of distance, and then if it flexes too little, the player will lose a lot of distance. Measurement of displacement. To measure the displacement of the club head, the golf club was mounted vertically and the golf ball was attached to a string, and then it was dropped from a known height. The ball was mounted to a string to ensure that the club head and the ball made good contact so that nothing was hit off at an angle, and it helps clean up the data. When the ball comes down to impact the club, it is very similar to the club impacting the ball. It's still the same concept whether or not the ball is impacting the head or if you're swinging the golf club. The USGA, the United States Golf Association, actually does a lot of testing to ensure that clubs meet the requirements, and they do this by launching the ball at the club head itself. So that we're using a similar concept, it's just on a much smaller scale. We use slow motion footage to watch the impact of the ball onto the club, and then we used some software to analyze the club head's displacement after the impact. Here's a video to show the impact of the ball onto the club head. We'll watch that a little bit. You can see after the ball impacts, it actually pushes the club head back, and then it has a nice little wiggle to it. You can also see in this as well that the face does actually open on the club. It's not just a straight backwards displacement. So below is the graph of the displacement of the club head after the impact. At 0 seconds, you can see that's where the impulse occurs of the ball impacting the club face, and then you can see the head travels backwards and then forwards, and then as time goes on, there's a dampening that occurs. Using software, the video was used to find the displacement of the club head over time, and then this data was brought into MATLAB to create this plot. I actually used this plot to create the transfer function instead of trying to simplify the club down to a more easier to analyze system. In my first solution, I simplified the club down to a spring mass system with a damper, and this proved to be an inaccurate way of doing things, as the club does not act this way. There's a lot more going on. So instead, I used the peak time and the maximum overshoot to find the dampening ratio and the natural frequency of the system. Once these values were found, they were plugged into this function below to create the transfer function for the club. This is the response of the transfer function to an impulse acting at 0 seconds. And this is a comparison of the two responses from time equals 0 to 3 seconds. As you can see, both of the functions are very similar, but as time goes on, they start to not follow the same path. This is the response of the transfer function to a swing speed that is 5 times faster than the original tested velocity, and to a response of a swing speed that is 2 times faster than the tested velocity. The response that is 5 times faster, the displacement of the shaft goes all the way up to 10 inches, while for the response that is 2 times faster, the displacement only goes up to 4 inches. For the swing speed that is 5 times faster, I would not say that this would be a good choice for that golfer, as 10 inches is a lot for a shaft to flex. At that point, I would expect the shaft to break. While for a swing speed around 2 times faster, that is right within a range that I would expect to be anything less than 6 inches, but greater than 2. If we go back to the comparison of the two functions over the first 3 seconds, as I stated before, they start to separate as time goes on. I think this is due to some outside factors that are affecting the golf club. Some of these could include micro vibrations in the shaft, the mounting technique. In the grand scheme of things, this doesn't matter too much, as we were only worried about the displacement of the shaft right after impact. As you can see, they're both very similar at this point, and using this data we can still see if the shaft is a good fit for the player. As an experienced club fitter myself, I can say that nothing matters after the ball impacts the shaft. Nobody has ever returned a club or been upset because a club hurt their hands or just felt too whippy after they hit the ball. Thank you all for your time from watching this video, and I hope you learned something. Have a great day.